Featuring prominent industry vendors, moderated by an independent analyst, Solutions Review presents the Expert Roundtable, an in-depth panel discussion focused on solving strategic enterprise challenges.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to this Expert Roundtable, Revolutionizing AI, Innovative Approaches to Cloud Stack Modernization. For this event, we've gathered expert technology builders from three of the fastest growing cloud data solution providers, Sigma Computing, Monte Carlo, and Databricks. This panel will explore how AI can be leveraged at the intersection of data observability, analytics, and architecture to drive innovation, deliver ROI, and establish a competitive edge for your organization. To moderate this discussion, we've invited Sean Rogers of Bark Research, a leading analyst firm for data and analytics and enterprise software. Sean is an internationally recognized analyst, strategist, thought leader, speaker, and author, specializing in artificial intelligence, machine learning, analytics, business intelligence, and cloud technologies. He's also a business builder, having founded and sold 2 internet media startups. Sean, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Thanks very much for moderating. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Doug, thanks a lot. Great introduction. I appreciate it. And man, what a title, right? This idea of revolutionizing AI innovation. It is probably the hottest topic in technology today. And everyone is stepping back and looking at their architecture, their solutions, and how they address what they're doing to innovate with AI and trying to find a modern approach to modernizing their cloud stack. And how do you get around doing that? And there's certain things that are incredibly important to end users today, creating a synergy, combining the right technologies, having a robust architecture, understanding your data, seeing it and accessing it and making it available to the right people has just become absolutely paramount when it comes to innovating, especially in the cloud and especially with AI. There's this really cool intersection right now around observability for data, around the insights you get from it, and making it available to those really highly talented people that are touching AI and touching advanced analytics through data science personas. So what we're here to talk about today is how to approach this problem and how to find a path to building a very strong foundation that will allow you to be innovative, to be a little disruptive, but at the same time, protect the analytic investment that you've made, not overly disrupt what is in your ecosystem that's driving other successes. But in order for you to be prepared and ready and ahead of your competition, when it comes to utilizing AI in cloud environments, you've got to modernize your approach. And we're here today to talk about sort of how to go about doing that, strategies for success, and best practices that you can employ as you start on this journey if you haven't already. So I have brought together a really great group of people to help us with this. And I'm going to have each of them go ahead and introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their companies. And then I'm going to dive in with a bunch of great questions. So, hey, Bryce, would you lead us off with introductions and let's jump in?
Sure. Thanks, Sean. It's great to be here. Excited with the great folks at Databricks and Sigma as well to be talking through this. It's a topic that's I'm passionate about. I am a product manager at Monte Carlo, and I kind of stumbled into the enterprise data space about 10 years ago. Fortunate to do so. Kind of cut my teeth on actually helping folks move to the cloud more on the HRIS side of the world with Workday data. And then kind of moved over into more of the BI and analytics world with Google Cloud as well. And so throughout that kind of journey, I really found that data quality and getting things into a format that were going to be useful for reporting or ML models, right, was a problem that really felt unsolved and it was very manual, right? And so I joined Monte Carlo a couple of years back, where at Monte Carlo we're actually the first company to bring machine learning to data quality itself. So the data quality tools have been around for a long time, but bringing kind of that machine learning approach with the thresholds to data quality and really pioneered observability in data as a category, right? So really bringing kind of that idea of observability that's gone so well and become so widely adopted within the software development stack, and bringing that to the data stack as well. So our goal is really to help ensure the quality and reliability around the data that powers those ML models and the AI models that folks are using, the reports that people are consuming, and it's used by a lot of great customers that you've heard of, like JetBlue, New York Times, and a lot of other data-driven companies out there. So it's great to be here. Excited to chat more.
I'll go next. Great to be here with you guys, Bryce, Stipo, and Sean. Thanks for having us. I'm Keon. I'm a solutions architect at Databricks. I've been at Databricks for about 2.5 years now, and I focus primarily on our financial services vertical. I have a background in data warehousing and BI and ML as well. And I was really intrigued a few years ago about Databricks and what we're building here. And I'm really excited about the future for Databricks, as well as our partners like Monte Carlo and Sigma. So I just want to take a minute and talk a little bit about what we're building here and what we're seeing across the industries. So quick overview of Databricks is that we're an end-to-end data platform that serves use cases and personas, really ranging from data ingestion and data engineering to ultimately getting data ready for other use cases like machine learning and AI, as well as being able to just analyze that data for more historical analytics and data warehousing type use cases from a single source of truth. So the foundation of Databricks is really built on a lakehouse architecture. And several years ago, Databricks created this lakehouse architecture to solve for this problem that we saw in the market of having multiple different disjointed architectures spread across siloed data lakes and data warehouses. So what really a data lakehouse is and how Databricks fits into that is that a lakehouse can help solve for a lot of challenges that could potentially arise from having that disjointed architecture. And we really believe in leveraging your cloud data lake as your centralized data storage layer, right? And that's because mostly cloud data lakes offer scalable and cost-effective storage for all different types of data, right? Structured, unstructured, real-time, and batch. And we can leverage this data from a single source of truth for a number of different use cases. But there was really two problems that were frequent from having this disjointed type of architecture. One of those is that if you have a data lake-centric approach, ease of use and scalability could be an issue, as well as having limited support for data warehousing type of ETL workloads. So we really solved for that by introducing a lakehouse table format called Delta Lake that essentially enables data warehousing-like capabilities directly at the data lake level. And that solves for the challenge of data reliability and performance and some scalability issues that could arise at the data lake. And then the second one is really, we should ensure that we have fine-grained access controls, not just table level, but also row and column level governance at that on that data that's stored at the data lake. And really the end result is that we're able to bring together multiple personas to work collaboratively on end-to-end use cases that range from data engineering to machine learning and data warehousing, all at the data lake level. So that's fundamentally what a lakehouse architecture is. But excited for the conversation today.
Wonderful. So hi, everyone. I'm Stipo, Director of Product Management at Sigma. My background is about 10 years in the data space, everything from actually performing analysis to being an engineer building analytics tools, to then being a data engineer building out pipelines and movement of data, as well as owning and managing business intelligence and analytics tools, to being a sales engineer and actually selling analytics products, and finally switching over into product and landing at Sigma, where I've been for over 5 years at this point. And so I'm excited to talk about Sigma. I'm excited to be here and share our insights and our perspective with everyone here. Sigma itself, the reason I'm so excited about it, the reason I've been here for so long, and the reason I've pivoted to product at Sigma really comes down to sort of what I've seen within my experience working with data and analytics and helping users really get insights from their data. And that is to say that I've seen a lot of what doesn't work. So Sigma, which is really the tools that we have today and where the world has been, hasn't been able to penetrate the people who actually need access to data. So Sigma's role in this world is to give all users access to the data that they need, access to big data to be able to perform their analysis. And while in doing so, we also give everyone and all users the full power of the cloud data platforms that we work with. So, and through our innovative UI, what we really allow users to do is to interact with data, big data, the way that they would interact with small data through really a spreadsheet interface. On top of that, we provide live collaborative capabilities so that these users can work together, but not just amongst themselves, but also with technical users, where we support SQL and as well as the interplay between SQL and non-technical users, building on top of each other's work and really storytelling together. And so with that, thank you again and excited to be here.
Thanks for the intro, guys. I want to dive into the question that's at the top of it that aligns really well with the title, right? Which is specifically, how are you helping companies kind of address this new disruption? We've all been in this space a long time. I was paying attention. I think there's 50, 60 years of experience on this panel right now. I don't think any of us have seen disruption like we're seeing from AI today. At any other time that we've all been in this industry, perhaps back to the days of Hadoop and big data was the last sort of detonation that sent ripples through all of our customers' mind about, oh, how do I do this? What do I do first? What do I need to change in my architecture to address this opportunity? It's not very often that we get something where we all know the date. OpenAI said at the end of November last year, kaboom, and all heck broke loose. And it's been really fun. But that's what we're here to talk about. So, Bryce, I'm going to start with you, but help expand on what your company does to specifically help people modernize what they're doing. Because as I listen to all three of you, there was a lot of very normal phraseologies in there. I heard the word data quality and I heard database. And so some of this isn't black magic. Sometimes it's the combination of things that make the value. But Bryce, can you kick us off on how you guys are extending value to your customers when it comes to modernizing their approach to AI in the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. I think you said it best even there, just talking about how it's really the combination, right, of these tools that allows for this to work in the benefit of customers, right? And what I mean by that is we can't provide quality of data without the place to store it or a place to consume it, right? So we're thinking about it holistically across the stack. So we talk a lot in Marco about thinking end to end. And making sure that whether it's the ingestion of where this data is actually coming from, those pipelines, how that transformation is happening, or how it's being prepped for analysis, or whether you're using Sigma to actually get in there and kind of prep some of the data yourself, right? We need that data to be of the right quality across the entire stack. And so what Monte Carlo is doing is really trying to look at it at each layer, right? Whether it's like kind of in the medallion architecture, right? The Databricks is really brought to the table, and we've seen popularized, right? Within that kind of bronze or silver or gold, or being consumed in reports or data products downstream. We want to be checking it at each layer, and using ML thresholds, we really think is kind of the best way to make that happen, right? When we're thinking about how much data is out there and it keeps growing, scaling quality is not really possible with people, right? I mean, we can't be writing unit tests across every piece of data that we come across. So we really are trying to make sure that we give you the tools to be able to do that across that data stack that you have.
Fantastic, thanks. Stipo, how would you jump on this from your perspective?
Well, I mean, first, having the right data is absolutely critical. And I think, up front, the things that Monte Carlo can provide, the perspective is so critical. And then we sort of, as Sigma, we sit on top of that to let users and people engage with that data. I mentioned that Sigma sort of this front end to be able to give the full power of the analytics clouds to users themselves, and that goes to being able to leverage models and AI directly from our product and through a familiar interface again, but this time just even through formulas. So you can call upon models as simply as writing a formula in a spreadsheet. And I think, the reality of that is that it's, these tools and, for predictive and prescriptive analytics have never been so accessible, both technologically and for users to be able to leverage themselves in their day-to-day than today. I mean, this is, I think, we're sort of at this turning point, and Sigma gives you that power. I'd say even beyond that, there's other interesting ways, past just that user, more the process of, say, AI and ML development that Sigma can help with. And that includes being able to, first and foremost, explore the data to be able to really understand your inputs, really understand those outputs, but then also in the middle, being able to evaluate outcomes, to score, and to ensure that there's accurate outcomes. We have a feature called input tables that allow you to actually, to write data back to the warehouse and input your data. And what that means is you can create those human in the loop cycles to ensure and to train and to continuously improve the models that you're working with too.
A human in the loop. That's a good point to make when we're talking about AI today, because I know that there's a lot of concerns about what happens to the humans when people want to automate these types of functions. I sure will get deeper into that. Kian, do you want to kind of address that first question about where you're adding value and helping people modernize to get on this wave?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think, Stipo and Bryce and Sean, you all mentioned some really great points. I think a couple things that stood out to me is, witnessing essentially these companies migrating to the cloud and trying to create a scalable architecture. Just as soon as they migrated their source data to the cloud, right, and they have a good solution for traditional classic machine learning, now you introduce the element of large language models, right, which require totally different type of infrastructure, different type of development lifecycle, and a lot of those traditional ML methods may not apply to that. But I think it's really important to think about having a scalable architecture that could handle what Bryce mentioned, which is really like the end-to-end standpoint, right? As a couple trends that I've seen is basically more data types are being leveraged for different types of use cases, right? That could be batch and streaming data. Could be that some of this data needs to be fed into a traditional machine learning model. But the challenging parts of this is typically the data engineering or feature engineering part. And then you have, the easy part, I guess, is the model building, right? But then you have the other hard parts, which are ML ops and trying to figure out how are we going to deploy these models to production and then monitor these models over time with something like Monte Carlo. And then the output of these machine learning models could go to something like Sigma, where an analyst could really easily be able to, get insights from a machine learning model. And then with what Stipo mentioned, write back to the underlying data source, right?
I love the synergy between all three of you, and I think it drives home the value proposition that today's session is kind of based on. That if you can bring the right solutions and right partners together in the right way, you don't have to blow up your architecture. And according to Kian, there's parts of this that are easy. So I didn't even know that coming into today's conversation. So guys, let me come back to you kind of for a round robin. I want examples. I promised everybody up front that we'd have some real world examples. If I could, Stipo, I'll come to you first. Can you share a little bit of an example about how the strategies that we're talking about have helped a client for you recently?
Yeah, I think, really there's many different aspects within which we've helped customers in this journey. I think, we've done everything from helping collect data throughout the organization, and then to be able to build models on top of it, to also the human in the loop sort of behavior for training models. And so one example is with the large retail customer. What they were able to do using Sigma was they were able to create, or really what they had was a problem dealing with their unprofitable customers. So their job is to deliver products to their customers, and sometimes those customers, those deliveries aren't profitable, and it could be because there's not enough. Not enough is being ordered. So there's it's a very small shipment and it's a very long distance. The cost for the driver, the cost of just getting that driver out there is too high. And there's a multitude of interventions that you can take on top of this to help make those to make those customers profitable. And that could be, that you're going to change the quantity that you deliver. It could be a change in the products that are going to be delivered. But ultimately, you want to make sure that you're choosing, you're taking some sort of action, you're logging it, and you're learning from it. So this customer was able to create a workbook and effectively an application where their account managers could review all of their own non-profitable customers. They could go in and they could add the context and decisions for how they plan on rectifying and how they plan on making this customer profitable. And then that data was then collected centrally for them to create models off of to understand what is the most effective intervention and what can they recommend to their account managers in particular circumstances and particular situations. So that gives them the ability to to take something that actually previously would happen entirely in a way that would be entirely lost throughout the organization because these decisions would be made in an ad hoc way or wouldn't necessarily be captured, to now being centralized. And not only that they learn, that the individual learns from it, but the entire organization is then able to learn about what is most effective collectively. I think that's incredibly powerful. We also have another example is we have a software development company that provides financial risk analysis to their customers. And so the risk assessments that they provide are produced by ML models. So they actually use Sigma for the very case of the human in the loop, where they have researchers reviewing the outputs and then adding any adjustments and adjudicating the conclusions that the model made so that it could learn for the future. And so directly feeding in, and that allows them to ensure and to create a better product for their own customers, right? Directly impacting that experience and what makes their product unique.
Great examples. I like the ending of both the sharing of the information across the enterprise, making sure that it's not lost inside of a vacuum or an automated sort of process.
And just to add to that, I think one of the unique, the fact that this is spreading information across sort of the enterprise. The one thing that's also just very interesting about this, and I think it's really a statement on technology and where it is today, that if you take the leadership of an enterprise and you take an initiative like making customers non-profitable customers profitable, that would usually take years, one, to implement these policies, and then also the amount of time, an insane amount of time to also be able to hear back and get the report on it. And now, not only do you learn from these interventions and can you build tools very quickly to action on these policy decisions, you're also getting a real-time visibility as well.
It's cool stuff, for sure. Keon, give me an example.
Yeah, I love those use cases that Stipo mentioned. I mean, for me, I spend most of my day working with financial services, and I personally am passionate about it. I think we're doing a lot of cool stuff like recommendations engines, churn models, credit decisioning models, and things pertaining to risk models. But I was kind of wanting to talk a little bit more about things that I find interesting outside of my normal financial services world. So 2 quick use cases for you guys. One is JetBlue. They're essentially using Databricks end-to-end capabilities to curate their data and perform the feature engineering that's needed for their ML models on both batch and real-time data. And they're using some specific capabilities of Databricks, like our online feature store, ML ops framework with ML flow, and model registry for model deployment. So some of their use cases include things like customer recommendations engines, internal revenue forecasting, dynamic fare prices, and also they predict arrival times with ETA forecasting. And I think it's particularly cool because they're also using Monte Carlo to monitor their data pipelines and also their ML models, right? It's really important to have the proper data quality and the quality of your machine learning models, especially over time. The second one I wanted to just quickly mention is that the Texas Rangers, essentially sports is kind of like a microcosm of other businesses, I think. And they're also being revolutionized by AI and analytics, right? So every team is looking for a competitive edge. And I think it's really cool. They're making real-time in-game decisions based on insight that's driven by real-time data sources like IoT devices that pick up biometric data from the players. There's a ton of different cameras on the field that are picking up images in real time, and they're using this data to better understand, how should they change their in-game strategy. But then in their post-game and pre-game decision-making, they do the same thing. And one thing I thought was interesting was that before Databricks, they essentially took them days to analyze post-game data. Now it's done in a matter of just hours, and some of it is even real time. So those are two that I thought were kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Two things. I love sports today. Thank you for bringing sports idea. Obviously, all of our brains go back to things like Moneyball. And I also love the idea of fast. Fast or real time is where the value lies. If you can see what you need to see, make a decision while the value still exists, like you said before a game, that type of stuff is incredibly important. So fantastic. So and Bryce, I think you're last. How about a little example from your side?
Yeah, I'll try not to get sidetracked on the sports examples too much. I could talk about the soccer data, the Premier League data for a long time, but I love the example there, Jan, of JetBlue too, with the shared customer there. I actually was thinking in my head about a talk that I saw at the Databricks Summit with Comcast. Did a shared talk about observability in the lake house, and I think just like a story that resonated with me, right, is I think we've all probably seen those use cases and situations, right, where some consumer doesn't trust that data, right? They don't trust the dashboard. They say, this something just looks off, and we help me figure it out, right? And I think just hearing them talk even a little bit just around putting out for the first time, like that proactive, like, hey, by the way, before you look at this dashboard, and Sigma, it's we have an incident, right? And it's not there. And building that trust is kind of this first like light bulb moment for a lot of our customers across this stack, right? Where, if we have this kind of end-to-end situation where we can get those alerts out ahead of time, and that proactiveness really leads to trust around the data. So those are always exciting to see.
So let me ask for kind of a fast answer on this one, guys. I think everybody who's listening to us is thinking, I could go this direction to get this work done. I could go this direction. And the three of you have done a great job of talking about the synergies between really highly interactive and smart partners. So in the smart partner sort of idea, what's the downside if you don't go that way? Why is it so critical to team up with a group of vendors that works well together versus more of a DIY approach, especially in the fast-moving terrain that we're in today? So who'd like to lead off on the short answer version of a big question?
I can take a shot at that. Yeah. I think one thing is that errors are not fun. And when you have a DIY solution, resolving errors and with an SLA can be really challenging. So that's, a challenge in and of itself. But the other one is that a lot of times DIY solutions are, in the cloud at least, are cloud specific, right? Cloud provider specific. So I think it's actually really important to have a multi-cloud solution. And from my personal experience, I'm seeing lots of financial services companies, at least, adopting a multi-cloud paradigm. So I think, the three of us are multi-cloud providers, and it's a good solid way to architect an end-to-end architecture that is scalable and available on all three clouds.
Yeah. Time is our most valuable asset, and if you are getting pieces of software that don't integrate well together, you're going to spend time working on integrating them, and that's not great. So that's my quick answer.
And to all of that, I would say the partnership that we also have together. So when, I think the partnership isn't just in the sense of that we work together, say, for marketing purposes or for sales on particular accounts, it's also to support our customers too. And so when there's an issue that comes up, we can respond fast, and we can respond fast together. And that's sort of our guarantee.
Yeah,
I think that last part's a great value proposition. So let me shift gears. The world's changing fast. Seeing data, accessing it quickly, applying deep analytics, actionable decision making has become the new normal. So my question is, why is this the new normal? Have we arrived at a time when you have to stand back, look at your architecture and go, holy cow, we've got to catch up? And is it the new normal? So anybody can lead off with the answer, but I want to hear your view on, is this in fact the new normal? Is this what everyone needs to be striving for?
Yes, absolutely. I think, there's an interesting thing here, which, ChatGPT, right? It all came out. It came out and it took the world, in an instant. And I think it changed the way that people think about working with technology and working with data. So we've had technologies for a very long time to be able to perform, to create the ML models and to work with predictive analysis. But the delta that came with ChatGPT is that now AI is a household term. And I think that's really sort of spilled over with people realizing, well, if I could use ChatGPT to make my life easier at home, and it's like this simple, why can't I do it at work? I have these monotonous tasks that I do over and over and over. Are there tools? Are there ways to do this better? And I have this analysis. Why can't I do something smarter with it? It's not just about the world. I think today it is. It's not just about looking at the past and learning from the past. It's also now very clear that we have the technology. We have ways to make these things accessible, and to not use them is losing on a competitive differentiator for making decisions and being able to make the right decisions at the right time, which is generally as soon as possible. So like that's absolutely critical. Say that that's absolutely critical if you have a product and you need to capture a market. But these things can also be just so helpful in also when you have time box problem solving, which is you need to make a decision. Are you going to invest in this particular real estate property? You need to be able to do it within a particular time box, and you need the best analysis possible to make sure you're using or making the right decision for you. And so right now, I think it is the new norm. And if you're not doing it, not only is it expected and it's obvious that technology is there, it's also, that if you're missing out, if you're not using it, because it's accessible and available for everyone else in the market.
Yeah, I think you made a great point. My mother never heard of Hadoop. But all of our relatives asked us in the holidays what this Gen AI, Open AI thing was. So, Bryce, where are you at on this topic? Is this the new normal? And I think it's great that Stipo said you can't turn your back on this. You have to take advantage of this new stuff. So, is that part of it?
Yeah, I think so, and I think especially for if you're listening today and folks that what we're talking to, I think for the most part I agree, right? I'll give the other side of it, right? Of you have to first think about is data really meaningful for my business and driving it forward, right? Is the only other piece that comes to mind, right? But if data is driving decisions that you're making as a business, or it should be, and maybe your competitors are using data to drive decisions, then absolutely. I mean, there's just no excuse to not be thinking about the modernization of your data stack at this point, and it's absolutely here to stay.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with both of them. I think sometimes it's important to just think about what the business challenge is that we're trying to solve, and then figure out, what data is needed and what type of solution is required. But I think to Stipo's point, I think basically time to insight and customer experience is more important than ever. I don't think that many people would be using ChatGPT if you had to basically write your question and then wait 5 minutes for an answer, right? So I think a lot of things are happening under the hood. Basically, companies are getting more access to broader sources of data, and some of them are streaming sources of data, but you kind of need an architecture in place that can actually be able to ingest that streaming data and do something with it in a reasonable amount of time.
Bryce, I'm going to come at you with this question. We've touched on the term scalability today, and that the analytic environment with machine learning is kind of different. How important, or what's the criticality of data quality when it relates to training, fine-tuning, and scaling ML models?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just the kind of fundamental part of it, right? If you put garbage in, you get garbage out. And so I think, you have to be considering that as a part of it. And I think these folks would agree that it's just a fundamental piece. And it kind of goes back to the trust piece I mentioned before, right? You might be building something and delivering that, but if your end stakeholders or the customers that are consuming that end product don't trust the data from where it's coming from, losing trust is something that degrades the product really, really quickly for that end stakeholder customer. So I think it's paramount from the beginning.
As an analyst, we get to talk to end users a lot, and I've occasionally had the question of, we have really bad data quality, but we'd like to do that cool thing over there. Can you tell us how to do that with bad data quality? And my answer is no, I can't.
Yeah.
It's kind of old things are new again. Data quality is not a new topic, but a lot of companies turned their back on addressing it and got distracted by more exciting things, perhaps. And now they're paying a price for it. So the ones that have that foundation are cool. Observability of data also kind of plays into this, especially around data lakehouses. So I'm kind of curious if you'd expand on the topic about how important observability plays a role there, and why you're helping customers from that standpoint.
Yeah, quickly. But I think it's, when we think about quality versus observability, right? Quality really kind of relies on the data itself and those values there. But as these folks know, that customers are really delivering these in different kind of stages and have complex pipelines of where this data is coming from. Steve just mentioned, like, gathering from all these different sources the data is coming from, right? Thinking about how that data is moving across the stack and getting transformed and getting prepped and ready to deliver into these ML and AI models. That's where that observability factor comes in. We want to make sure that in each hop that quality is still there and it's getting executed on time.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's become a critical component of anybody's stack. Here's a fun one. Industries. Everybody adopts things at different rates and quicker and faster than others. So you guys get to see a lot of end user customers. So Steve, I'm going to start with you, but I'm kind of curious, where do you see traction? Where do you see customers going, I've got to modernize, I've got to shift, I've got to change? Where are you seeing it most, and why do you think it's being driven?
Well, I think this probably shouldn't be a surprise, but retail, CPG, finance, healthcare, right? These are industries with large data volumes that have traditionally been spreadsheet oriented, which meant very labor intensive, but have always and need to be data forward, right? And so in these industries, I think there's just so much opportunity, especially, I think the first step just being able to work with that data and the capacity that it comes in for basic analysis, for basic insight. The next one then being, doing more than that. I gave the example earlier of a company, of a retail company that has deliveries, and they're trying to make their customers, or rather their deliveries, profitable. That's certainly one example. In healthcare industry, we see companies that take processes that involve, reviewing and looking for anomalies in their data manually. They can now apply AI to better scale. I think one of my favorite customer examples is maybe a little bit weird for it to be a favorite, which is in the healthcare industry, and it's reviewing. What they do is they review codes for the codes that providers send for insurance purposes. And now, what you typically expect out of this story is, well, they need to ensure accuracy and detect anomalies in order to ensure that they're like compliance, all of these compliance requirements are met. But the reality is that they're able to when they're able to actually review codes, identify anomalies, and hold providers accountable, they're actually ensuring that the providers are providing a great customer experience and making sure that those people who are getting healthcare are going to get healthcare that is more accurate. Their charts are going to be up to date. And so it's really affecting the lives of people. And the reason, AI is a part of the story is because the amount of data that they have to process and what it means to sift through and look for anomalies is, as a human, it's impossible to be able to capture everything. Instead, what they can now do is leverage human, not necessarily scale or create temporary massive teams to review all of this data at certain times of the year. They could instead have a much smaller team to review the anomalies that are raised and surfaced by AI that has found trends and patterns and things that seem anomalous, which ultimately will also increase the accuracy of the anomalies that they see, and I'll probably capture things that people wouldn't see with looking at this naked eye or performing sort of standard analysis. So it's a really brilliant way of I think healthcare being able to directly impact people and and their lives using AI.
Bryce and Keon are going, well, he took all the best industries. So Bryce, coming back at you. What industry are you seeing that's stepping up and asking for help?
Absolutely. I mean, those are great ones as you called out, and I think it's truly. I mean, I'm going to be shocked if Keon has a different answer in some ways, right? Because it's these are all industries where data is really important, right? And to each of us, like that's where the value starts to come in. We can provide value at a lot of these different industries. To me, I think a good one to call it's like media and entertainment, right? Is a good balance of large enterprises, large companies, household names that really have gone out and modernized quickly in order to compete in the space with all like streaming services and things like that. Data is just critically important, and we're seeing a lot of adoption there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with any of those. I'm slightly biased because I work primarily with financial services, but I do have to say, I mean, you guys can probably agree. In the last couple of years, I've seen even the most highly secure and conservative finance organizations adopting the cloud really quickly because their use cases have scaled so quickly and their business requirements have gotten to the point where, there's hardware limitations on-prem and they really don't have the time to wait for, their on-prem hardware to catch up. So I would say not only have we seen finance organizations embracing the cloud, now they're embracing multi-cloud, right? So, and like I was saying earlier, it's been amazing to see how fast companies have adopted to just implementing classic machine learning like regression and classification, but now in adapting to the new world it hasn't even been a year that ChatGPT has been out, but now almost every conversation that we have, people are really interested in learning more about what is our generative AI and large language model strategy.
It has become the conversation opener, I think, for everybody. Back in November, I was keeping track how long into a briefing it would take a vendor or a customer to either ask me about the topic. When it got down to the first 15 seconds, I knew it wasn't worth tracking anymore. It is the topic of the day. Kian, you just kind of gave us a little on-ramp to my next question. Challenges. Everybody has their own independent challenges. You just mentioned that things are growing and moving so fast that they're looking at hybrid cloud strategies. But what are the common challenges that your customers are coming to you with? Do they line up exactly with what you do as a company, or are you seeing other things enter the conversation around AI workloads? So, Bryce, you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind as you mentioned it, right, is like people are trying to move quickly on this, right? And so you're standing up pipelines, you're standing up a data stack that goes out there quickly. Just getting the people to involved to make sure that it can remain scalable as you build it out is going to be important. So getting the people that have these skill sets in the AI space is always a roadblock or at least a bottleneck, right? But I'd be remiss to not mention data quality as being a roadblock, right? To getting those workloads out in production. So, those are a couple of things that really come to mind for me.
Cool, Keon, where are you at on this one? Roadblocks. What are you hearing from your customers?
I think basically can summarize it to just 2 points. One is a lack of collaboration, and sometimes that's due to a disjointed architecture. So sometimes when I talk to a customer, they'll say, yeah, we have 50 different databases and we need data from all of them to be able to get insight for an end user to be able to use that data in Sigma, right? For example, right? So I think that's one challenge. And part of this, like the more complex the use case is, the more teams we need to involve, right? So it's not the case that maybe like a machine learning team can do everything on their own. They need help from a data engineering team, or then they need help from machine learning engineers to put a model into production, right? So I think this type of thing is kind of complicated, but I have seen a shift towards less siloed data sources into one unified layer, which is nice. And then the second part is really just an inability to scale, part of which is a result of what I just mentioned. So I think the business has requirements now that are totally solvable, but maybe not by their existing tech stack, right? It could be that now, all of a sudden the business has a requirement to handle streaming data, and then their underlying tech platform just simply can't do like streaming transformations, for example.
Silos is such a good one. It's just, it's everywhere.
Yeah. Steve, anything to add to that one?
Yeah, well, I think being the user-facing tool, the perspective that we see here, I mean, for us, it's security. So we Sigma does provides an out-of-the-box like OpenAI integration, so that you could use it for really sort of to offload human tasks like classification, if you want to do a classification, or say sentiment analysis, which is really neat. Naturally, there's you know despite really wanting, ChatGPT being kind of the front runner for the technology that you want to use, security comes up. I think Samsung had the case not too long ago of sensitive business information ending up in being used in LLMs, and that being leaked, which is absolutely terrifying as a business, right? It can entirely ruin the brand that you've built and the products that you provide, and so security comes up as one of these, I think, roadblocks where, but the reality is when that security comes up, what we get is just the interest in customers building their own LLMs, and using closed-sourced LLM frameworks like Databricks Lakehouse AI, and really wanting to go into the world of building, their own LLMs to be able to safely work with their data.
Yeah, the safety aspect's a big one. I'm doing a piece of research right now, and we're asking hundreds of professionals whether or not their companies have put a lock or guidelines or not done anything about using some of these open platforms. And almost 60% of the respondents to the survey are saying my company has put rules in place for this kind of thing. So I agree with you. I think that aspect is important. Let's talk about being proactive and being consultative with our customers for a minute. What kind of strategies are you giving your customers, not just to solve their immediate issue, but thinking about where we're heading in this AI journey? We got to look down the road a little bit. What are you all telling your customers from a strategic, sort of proactive standpoint on what they should be considering? Keon's thinking hard, so I'm going to take on and ask him to lead us into this conversation. What comes to mind first?
Yeah, these Stipo and Bryce will probably like this, but just like a software company has a tech roadmap, I often ask my customers, what does your roadmap look like? Like, from like a 6 to 12 month to 18-month standpoint, like what are your goals for what you want to implement in the short to medium term, right? Because if you're not really thinking about things from, a not just we need our needs solved today standpoint, but also we need to anticipate future needs, then you're going to be in a constant state of rebuild and re-architecture, which is not fun. So I think, that's my strategy. I ask people kind of, what are your plans for the short and medium term?
Guys, does that resonate with you? Are you giving your customers similar advice?
Yes. I mean, I absolutely. I think it's the advice is to think about data as a strategic resource. I think it's make sure, if you don't have data quality right now, you're going to miss out on insights when you do get it. Right. So at minimum, say that you're not going to necessarily go the full, to the last mile and to create models on top of this within the next 12 to 18 months. Make sure that you have quality data for when you get there. And so and just as much as quality data, make sure that you're capturing the data that you might not be capturing right now. Right. So these are just very basic things, which is once you have that data, that's really the resource that you're going to have, that's going to make you unique. That's going to I've used the term competitive advantage a bazillion times so far, and I keep going back to that. But that's really what it is. And so prepare yourself, prepare your company, because this is the trajectory that the world is going in. And so and just by virtue of having that data available, even if the intent is 12, 18 months from now, you are going to create models, you're going to use it for AI. Even in the short term, you can make use and get value out of that, even just doing it for basic BI analytics and making that accessible to users too. So invest.
Yeah, you call them strategic resources, right? And I think another way that I've been hearing come up a lot for folks is like the data product, right? We're seeing more and more of this idea that the product itself is the data, right? And we want to think about those end products that we're delivering value to customers or stakeholders and what are the components that allow you to move quickly to get that to market, right? And having kind of that invest in that modern architecture quickly can allow you to do that and iterate quickly on that data product as well. So at Monte Carlo, we built out quite a few tools around monitoring those data products or looking at it holistically. So whether it's dashboards in Sigma or Delta tables in the Lakehouse, we want you to be able to kind of see that whole data product holistically and leverage that strategic investment, as Stephen mentioned.
Excellent insights. I got 2 more questions and probably not enough time. So you guys are going to have to move a little quicker here for me at the end. But I wanted to shift off of tech for a minute. We've talked like the nerds that all 4 of us are, but we did talk about humans as they are applied in AI processes and applications, and that's important. Everybody listening also has, besides the tech thing, what are they doing about culture? How are they creating a thriving data-driven environment within their work? I always like to ask people, what are the critical things that you tell your customers that they need to be thinking about if they want to have the right culture within their business in order to take advantage of this kind of cool stuff? So Steve, you want to go first, but remember, I'm down to the time, so fast.
I can speak passionately. I don't know if I can speak quickly.
That's perfect.
But so trust in your people, right? I cannot underscore this enough. If we want a data-driven culture, you need to make sure that the people who need to make decisions on data have access to data and that they can make these decisions. There's sort of an unspoken internalized culture when it comes to analytics, which is that you don't want people to hurt themselves, and so you use governance to make sure that they don't. When the reality of where all of this sort of centralization and governance has really sort of come from came from only a few people being able to work with big data because it needed to be centralized. You needed a technical skill set. It also came from the cost of running queries. And now we've solved those problems. But what lingers is this idea that it's really that end consumers really shouldn't be working with big data because they can make incorrect analyses. But the reality is that happens already. It just happens on small data, and it's going to happen whether or not you want it to happen or not. So at least the reality is at least allow them to work in the cloud. Make sure that when they do their analysis, it's live. Make sure that that it's available and accessible so that others can review it and ensure that if there is a question, and make sure that they don't have to rebuild this report offline every at the end of every quarter, at the end of every month. And so it's really a lot has changed here, and the problem, and we have residual problems or residual culture from technological problems that we've had of the past. And so I think there's a danger here where, again, I go back to you're missing out on a competitive edge if you're not fostering and facilitating this culture that is dependent on trusting your people.
I almost want to just continue that thread and say it maybe in a way that speaks to me specifically, is this idea of that access to it and access to data. But that, exactly what you just said, it's things have changed to the point where we don't even, we still have data teams that help us kind of bring up this underlying infrastructure and the modernization of that infrastructure, right? But everyone is starting in the business is starting to become a consumer of data more than they were years past, right? It's so much more accessible. There's so much more value that we're getting out of the AI models that we're putting into this data, that having that just access there is to Ziva's point, the access is what can create that culture around data.
Yeah, I'll build off the same thing. I love the aspect of trust and just essentially enabling self-service analytics, right? We would be amazed to see what people can do with access to data. But I guess my take home is embrace change. I think there's been a lot that has changed recently. And I think a culture of ideas and innovation at these organizations is really important. And change isn't always a bad thing, right? So it can really be a good thing. It can enable lots of new business outcomes or solve a lot of existing challenges. So I think just not being complacent and embracing the change that we've already seen and we're probably going to see in the short term.
I think it's fun when you put 3 companies that do business together quite a lot. They don't argue. They're kind of seeing things through the same vein. That goes back to my DIY question a while back, right? If you can find partners that know how to see the market through similar filters, there's a lot of value in it. So Last question. And it's that kind of fun future question. I'm going to ask all three of you to kind of let everybody who's listening in. What does the future hold right now? I mean, I've never seen our space move so fast with a particular technology, and then this need to modernize your stack and modernize your approach to the cloud. What does the future hold from an AI, data, analytics standpoint as everything collides to be more innovative? So, who wants to lead that one off?
I can take it. My take would be that we'll spend less time mining through the muck of data out there. That generative AI and what we're doing in this space is going to allow us to kind of bring the forefront of the data that's important more accessible and make it easier to get to that and have that trusted data rather than spending a bunch of time up front doing the transformation and prepping the data for the models, things like that. That's my hope, and I think it's coming.
I think I'd say, to build off of that is, people with LLMs, with ChatGPT, people can be so much more productive, and products can be too, right? So I think the reality is that AI is a tool that that you should expect to be a part of the data stack, and as long as you need human context in preparing data, in understanding data, in understanding conclusions made by models and by AI, you're gonna continue to have the stack, but really expect that the things that you do in the stack to be streamlined using these technologies.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with both of you. I think for me, to summarize it in three real things, right? And one of them I mentioned already, which is streaming data and real-time insight is more important than ever. And I think that's going to be a theme continuing, because I don't think that many businesses are really taking full advantage of real-time data quite yet. And similarly, unstructured data is becoming more and more important. Lots of these models, especially the LLMs, are working off of unstructured data, right? So it's giving us access to things that we never thought was possible before or required a ton of effort to first get into a structured format, right? And then the third one is pretty obvious. It's the trend around just LLMs and generative AI. I've seen our customers do some really cool things already with this, the latest technologies. Everything from creating assistants, could be code generators, chatbots, summarization assistants. So, to Stipo's point, I think that this trend of making, the business and the users more efficient through AI is definitely going to continue.
Great answers. If I sit and listen to it, I'm hearing you got to be agile, you got to be flexible, you have to move at the speed of your business, you have to be fast, you got to get the data in the right hands across your organization so you don't miss the opportunities. And I think all that's great advice, especially looking forward. I'm also really proud of you as a group. No one said killer robots, so thank you for that. That's always a good way to wrap it up. This has been a fun conversation. It's a big challenge for our friends, our customers out there who are trying to figure out how to keep pace with today's innovation. So I want to thank all three of you for joining me for this conversation. Your insights were fantastic. So thank you very much for being here. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Doug, and thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot, Sean. We appreciate you moderating that roundtable. It was a great conversation. Stipo, Bryce, Keon, thanks very much for the discussion today. Well, there you have it. Another expert roundtable in the books. We want to thank Sigma Computing, Monte Carlo, and Databricks for their participation, and we appreciate your attendance as well. Until next time, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review. Thanks for watching.